Welcome to FactUp, where we dive deep into the ideas that shape our world. Have you ever stopped to ask yourself, who really wins in recent elections? Do you truly know what led to the outcome or how the candidate secured your vote? In every election, we focus on who comes out on top. But have you ever wondered if the real winner is always the best choice for the people? It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of campaigns, big promises, strong emotions, and slogans that stick in your head. But have you thought about how these feelings influence your decisions? Are we, as voters, always aware of how candidates might be using our fears and hopes to secure victory? Let's take a closer look at this. We'll explore the concept of demagoguery, a strategy where politicians manipulate emotions instead of presenting real solutions. It's not just about who gets the most votes, it's about how they get them. And sometimes, the path to victory can be more about playing with our feelings than offering true leadership. So, let's dive in together and ask ourselves, are we voting for the best leader or simply the one who knows how to push our buttons? Before we talk about how emotions and tactics can shape elections, it's important to first understand the core beliefs of the two major political parties in the U.S., Democrats and Republicans. These two parties have been dominating American politics for decades, but they stand on very different foundations. Democrats. The Democratic Party is known for its progressive views. At its core, Democrats believe in the power of the government to improve society. They argue that by providing services such as healthcare, education, and social welfare programs, the government can reduce inequality and offer opportunities to those who might otherwise be left behind. Democrats tend to support higher taxes on the wealthy and more regulation of businesses to ensure that everyone has a fair chance to succeed. In terms of social policies, they are often in favor of social progress, pushing for rights for minority groups, gender equality, and environmental protection. Philosophically, they see the government as a tool for achieving fairness and protecting the public from the excesses of capitalism. This party's roots go back to figures like Franklin D. Roosevelt and the New Deal, where government intervention was seen as a way to pull America out of the Great Depression. Today, many Democrats continue to advocate for a strong welfare state that provides a safety net for its citizens. Republicans. On the other side, the Republican Party believes in limited government. Republicans argue that individual freedom and personal responsibility are key to success. They believe that too much government regulation stifles innovation and prevents people from reaching their full potential. Republicans typically favor lower taxes, especially for businesses and high earners, with the belief that this encourages investment, job creation, and economic growth. They see the free market as the best way to create prosperity for everyone and believe that less government interference means more opportunities for people to succeed based on their own efforts. Socially, Republicans often hold conservative views, supporting traditional family structures and values. They are generally more resistant to rapid social change and prefer to preserve long-standing traditions. Philosophically, Republicans prioritize individual liberty over collective welfare and see government as something that should protect rather than direct the lives of its citizens. This party has its origins in figures like Abraham Lincoln, who advocated for a union based on individual rights and limited government. Today, Republicans continue to push for policies that emphasize economic freedom and personal responsibility. Have they always stayed true to their principles? Now that we've explored the core beliefs of both Democrats and Republicans, the next question naturally arises. Have these parties always stayed true to their founding principles? History tells us that political parties, like individuals, are not perfect. Both Democrats and Republicans have faced moments where their actions didn't quite align with their stated values. There have been times when Democrats, despite advocating for equality, struggled to address the needs of certain groups, or when Republicans, champions of limited government, expanded the government's role in areas like defense or social control. For example, Democrats who emphasize social justice and government intervention have at times been criticized for not effectively addressing the concerns of certain marginalized communities. Meanwhile, Republicans, who advocate for individual freedom and less government interference, have sometimes supported policies that expand governmental power, especially in areas like national security and immigration. The reality is, politics is often a balancing act between idealism and pragmatism. Situations change, leaders shift priorities, and compromises are made. What matters most is how these parties have evolved and whether they remain committed to their core beliefs, or whether they've been swayed by external pressures, special interests, or changing times. In the end, it's up to you, the voter, to look beyond the promises and slogans. Have these parties really lived up to what they claim to stand for? Or have they, at times, fallen short? It's a question worth asking as you decide where to place your trust in future elections. Now that we've explored the core values of Democrats and Republicans, let's take a step back and think about how these ideas are actually presented to us during elections. Have you ever noticed how some candidates focus more on stirring up your emotions than offering concrete solutions? Maybe they talk about how the system is rigged or promise to fix all your problems overnight. Perhaps they create fear around certain groups or issues, making it seem like they are the only ones who can protect you. These tactics may seem familiar, right? In today's political landscape, we often see candidates, regardless of their party affiliation, use fear, anger, and even hope to manipulate voters' emotions. They use strong language, catchy slogans, and dramatic imagery to get your attention. But what's really happening here? This, my friends, is what we call demagoguery. It's a strategy where politicians win support not by offering real, thoughtful solutions, but by playing on our deepest fears and desires. Instead of guiding us with logic and reason, they lead us with emotions, often to serve their own interests. Before we go any further, I'd like to take a moment to explain this concept in more detail. Demagoguery isn't new. It's been around for centuries and has been used in many countries across the world. In fact, history is full of examples where demagogues have risen to power, only to lead their nations into chaos. Would you like to explore some real-world examples with me? From historical figures to modern-day leaders, we'll see how demagoguery has shaped politics and how it continues to influence elections today. Before we dive into modern examples of demagoguery, let's take a moment to explore where this concept comes from. The term demagogue has its roots in ancient Greece, where the word demagogos was used to describe leaders who appealed directly to the common people. This word is a combination of demos, meaning people, and agogos, meaning leader or to lead. Originally, the word wasn't necessarily negative. It simply referred to leaders who spoke for the masses. However, as time went on, demagogues began to be associated with manipulative and dishonest leaders who would say whatever it took to gain power, often by inciting fear, prejudice, or false hope. One of the earliest recorded uses of demagoguery was in ancient Athens, where certain leaders were accused of manipulating the emotions of the public for personal gain. One of the most famous examples from this period is Cleon, a leader in Athens during the Peloponnesian War. Cleon was known for his fiery speeches and his ability to stir up the masses by exploiting their fears and frustrations. He played on the emotions of the public, convincing them to support extreme actions, often to disastrous consequences. This was one of the earliest signs of how dangerous demagoguery could be when it leads to impulsive decisions by the public. Over time, the term demagogue came to represent any political leader who prioritizes their own ambition over the public good, using emotional manipulation rather than logical or ethical arguments to win support. Now that we've covered where demagoguery comes from, let's look at how it has played out in other parts of history and how it continues to shape politics today. As we've seen, demagoguery has deep roots in history, and unfortunately it hasn't gone away. In fact, throughout time, many leaders have used these same tactics, appealing to emotions rather than reason, to rise to power. Let's explore some of the most notable examples. 1. Adolf Hitler, Germany, 1930s-1940s. Perhaps the most infamous example of a modern demagogue is Adolf Hitler. In the aftermath of World War I, Germany was in economic and political turmoil. Hitler, with his ability to tap into the anger, fear, and frustration of the German people, used demagogic tactics to gain power. He blamed the country's problems on scapegoats, particularly Jews, and promised to restore Germany to its former glory. His powerful rhetoric and ability to manipulate emotions led to one of the darkest chapters in history, the rise of the Nazi regime and World War II. Number 2, Huey Long, United States, 1930s, known as the Kingfish. Huey Long was a populist politician in the United States during the Great Depression. He used demagogic techniques to appeal to the anger and frustration of the American people, promising radical wealth redistribution through his Share Our Wealth program. Long was a master of stirring up the emotions of the public, convincing many that he was the only one who could save them from poverty. Although he was assassinated before he could run for president, his demagogic tactics left a lasting impact on American politics. 3. Joseph McCarthy, United States, 1950s. Another famous American demagogue was Senator Joseph McCarthy, who capitalized on the fear of communism during the Cold War. Through his fiery speeches and unfounded accusations, McCarthy created a climate of fear and suspicion, convincing many Americans that their government was infiltrated by communist spies. His reckless behavior led to the persecution of innocent people and damaged the lives and careers of many. McCarthy's rise and fall serve as a classic example of the dangers of demagoguery. Demagoguery isn't just a thing of the past, it's alive and well in modern politics. In recent years, we've seen many political figures across the world use these tactics to secure power. 1. Viktor Orban, Hungary. The Prime Minister of Hungary, Viktor Orban, has been accused of using demagogic tactics to manipulate public opinion. He often appeals to nationalistic sentiments and stokes fears about immigration and the loss of Hungarian culture. By portraying himself as the defender of Hungary against outside threats, Orban has consolidated power and weakened democratic institutions in the country. Number 2. Jair Bolsonaro, Brazil. Brazil's former president, Jair Bolsonaro, rose to power by exploiting anger over corruption and crime. Like many demagogues before him, Bolsonaro used strong, emotional language to divide the population, positioning himself as the only person who could fix Brazil's problems. His rhetoric often targeted marginalized groups and created fear around issues like crime and communism, which he used to justify controversial policies. Number 3. Donald Trump, United States. One of the most high-profile modern examples is Donald Trump. Throughout his political career, Trump has used demagogic strategies to appeal to the fears and frustrations of many Americans. He frequently used emotional and divisive language to create a sense of us versus them, often blaming immigrants, the media, or political elites for the country's problems. His speeches were often filled with promises of winning and restoring America's greatness, while creating an atmosphere of distrust toward opponents and institutions. 4. George Wallace, United States, 1960s. George Wallace, the governor of Alabama in the 1960s, is another example of demagoguery, this time from within the Democratic Party. Known for his staunch opposition to civil rights, Wallace played on the racial fears and prejudices of Southern white voters to maintain his political power. His infamous slogan, "Segregation now, segregation tomorrow, segregation forever," was a clear example of how he used emotional manipulation and division to rally support. Although he later distanced himself from these views, Wallace's early career demonstrates how even Democrats have historically used demagogic tactics to gain and maintain power. Now that we've looked at some historical and modern examples of demagoguery, let's take a moment to reflect on its consequences. What happens when emotions, rather than logic and reason, drive our political choices? At first glance, demagogues often appear to be champions of the people. They promise quick fixes, offer simple solutions to complex problems, and present themselves as the voice of the forgotten. But behind the fiery speeches and emotional appeals, there's a deeper truth. Demagoguery doesn't solve problems, it exploits them. The most immediate consequence of demagoguery is division. Demagogues thrive by creating an us versus them mentality, pitting different groups of people against each other. Whether it's based on race, religion, immigration status, or political affiliation, this division erodes the social fabric of a nation. Instead of finding common ground, people are encouraged to fear or resent those who are different from them. But the damage doesn't stop there. When emotions take control, critical thinking takes a back seat. People start making decisions based on fear, anger, or hope rather than facts or evidence. This leads to impulsive decisions, electing leaders who may not have the best qualifications or following policies that harm more than they help. In the end, demagoguery can weaken democratic institutions, allowing for the rise of authoritarianism. History has shown us what happens when demagogues gain too much power. In some cases, they dismantle democratic systems, suppress dissent, and even turn to violence to maintain their hold on power. And what's worse, when the public eventually realizes the false promises and manipulation, the damage has often already been done. Think about it. Are we letting our emotions guide us in ways that could harm our future? This isn't just about politics, it's about the choices we make as a society. Are we willing to sacrifice our long-term well-being for short-term emotional satisfaction? Or can we recognize the dangers of demagoguery before it's too late? As we've seen, demagoguery has the power to shape elections, influence societies, and change the course of history. But it's not invincible. The key to overcoming it lies in awareness, critical thinking, and a refusal to be swayed solely by emotions. At the end of the day, you hold the power. Your vote, your choices, and your ability to question what you see and hear all play a part in building a better, more informed society. Don't let fear or anger guide you. Let knowledge and reason be your compass. It's also important to remember that political parties are not sports teams. Supporting a political party isn't like cheering for Real Madrid or Barcelona. Changing your political stance based on facts, reason, and what's best for your country isn't a betrayal. It's smart decision-making. Blind loyalty to any party without evaluating their actions and policies critically only harms your future. Politics should be about what benefits society in the future, not about emotional attachments or rivalries. Here at FactUp, our mission is to help you think critically and explore the deeper truths behind the issues that shape our world. If you found this discussion thought-provoking, we invite you to stay connected and continue exploring more fascinating topics with us. Subscribe to our channel for more insightful content. And if you want to support our mission of promoting awareness and understanding, consider becoming a member. Your support allows us to create more in-depth content, share important stories, and spread knowledge that can help everyone make better, more informed decisions. Lastly, if you care about your country's future, share this message with your friends. Help them make informed choices as well, because together we can all work toward a better tomorrow. Remember, the power to shape the future starts with understanding the present. Let's build that future together.